first one I want to get into is the San Francisco 49ers, and their receiving core seems like it is getting depleted day after day after day. We know George Kittle is a stud tight end, but Steph, is there anybody else in this 49ers passing game that you want any piece of in fantasy football outside of George Kittle?
There's a few guys, so we got to put some context behind some of it.
Really?
Deebo Samuel, I want them at their ADPs or below their ADPs. There's not guys like I'm never going to just totally fade a guy. There's always going to be a point where they do become a value, and I think there could be paths to fantasy relevance for two. I'm not going to say three, for two of the wide receivers on this team. Deebo Samuel, it's tough with the foot injury. He's coming in banged up, probably not going to play week one based on all the reports that we've seen up to this point. We'll see how things change leading up to week one kickoff. But as of right now, Deebo's not going to be out there. So it's going to be hard to predict. But I'm kind of excited about Brandon Aiyuk. With this 49ers team, let's talk about some of the changes that have happened since we saw them on that Super Bowl run last year. So we have Emmanuel Sanders heading over to New Orleans. We have Marquise Goodwin going over to Philadelphia. That's 71 vacated targets. We know the volume is low with Shanahan's run-heavy scheme. They threw the ball fourth fewest in the NFL last season. We're in the bottom half the year before that, back in 2018. So I do expect the volume to go up, whether that's for Deebo, whether that's for Brandon Aiyuk, whether that's for Kendrick Bourne, who we'll talk about here a little bit more in a second. But especially with the reports now that Nick Bosa is dealing with injury. They lost DeForest Buckner to your Colts. I could see regression in the efficiency of that run game. It's tough to see Jimmy G throwing the ball, though, over 510 times this season. Are you fine, Alex, taking Deebo? Right now his ADP is the wide receiver 37. I haven't ended up with him in really any of my drafts. Are you kind of just waiting to see if he falls past the ADP with the injury worries?
Yeah, I'm out on Deebo right now. I mean, it's tough because in a 12-team league, you're probably going to have to draft him as your wide receiver 3. And for me, typically in a 12-team standard PPR or a 12-team PPR league, I'm usually going to play a wide receiver in my flex spot. So to draft Deebo and have to sit him on your bench and then wait an extra round or two for someone you could potentially be starting is just tough for me. So if you're in, a greater than 14 or a greater than 12-team league, like 14, 16, a really deep league, it's so hard to reach and grab Deebo, even at his current ADP, because you don't want to draft a guy that you might not get for 4-6 weeks and you could end up getting off to a slow start. And then your starting lineup is a lot weaker to start out the season. So maybe in a 10-team league, if Deebo is your wide receiver 4, or if you can get him as your wide receiver 4 in a 12-team league, I'm okay to take the shot on Deebo Samuel, because if you get Deebo Samuel for 10, 12 weeks healthy and you didn't even have to worry about starting him in the first few weeks anyway, you could actually end up getting someone that really contributes down the stretch. But right now, I'm kind of out on Deebo because he's being drafted as someone who you're going to have to, sub out your flex or a better tight end to draft Deebo Samuel. And for me, it's just not worth it because we still don't know what Deebo Samuel is going to be in this offense. You said it, incredibly low volume last year. I do think the volume will increase slightly, but the style of this offense under Kyle Shanahan, Jimmy G at quarterback, someone who's not going to throw the ball 35 times a game, a run game, a good defense. I do expect some regression in some areas, but I don't think it's going to change their style and what they want to do. And because they're going to want to play the same brand of football, I just don't know that there's going to be enough to support all these different options, the run game, Kittle, and a banged up Deebo Samuel.
And I'm worried, too, for Deebo long-term. Like, that, this could be a lingering issue throughout the rest of the season. He could be like a Marquise Brown last year playing with a nail in his foot. Like, we don't know where he's going to end up going. It may need surgery. It may
Evan
not.
Ingram bounced in and out of the lineup last year with a foot injury as well, and he was trash after he got hurt.
It's one of those things, like, you hate to see that, and that's something that could linger for a very long time. I'm okay with Brandon Aiyuk. He's the wide receiver 59 right now per.
I mean, Brandon Aiyuk is hurt as well. Brandon Ayuk's out right now. He's week to week. He might not even be ready for week 1.
That's news to me.
He had a hamstring
issue.
issue.
That one, I guess. But, I mean, before I heard that, I was actually fine with Aiyuk as one of those late-round upside flyers that you can take. So, I guess with that news now, Alex, are you just totally fading both Aiyuk and Samuel? I guess it's Kendrick Bourne now as our next best bet.
Yeah, exactly. Steph, I'm kind of in the same boat. Aiyuk is someone who I was willing, last pick of the draft, second to last pick of the draft, take a shot on Aiyuk. There's going to be opportunity in the offense. He was a first-round pick. Now as a rookie, very recent news, at least when we're recording this podcast, he has that hamstring issue. He's week to week. He might not be ready for week one. And regardless, as a rookie in a shortened off season, you don't want someone who hasn't been out there in camp. So it looks like the receivers in this offense week one could be Kendrick Bourne, Dante Pettis, and Trent Taylor. So that's disgusting to me. I mean, Deebo, Aiyuk, Jalen Hurd are all hurt. Travis Benjamin opted out. So this is going to be, I mean, they could run the ball 40 times in week one. And Steph, I'm going to throw a name out there that I'm not saying to pick him up. I'm not saying to start him. Maybe if you're in a deep dynasty, a very deep league, maybe a 2 tight end league, if there's any of those floating out there. Jordan Reed. I mean, I know if he hits the ground one time, he's probably going to get a concussion, but there's been some hype around him in camp, and there's nobody else to throw to. So I'm not making that recommendation, but it's interesting that Jordan Reed, sadly, could be the number 2 or 3 option in this offense for the first couple weeks. I don't think he's fantasy relevant, but that is what the 49ers are dealing with here.
At least the good news for Aiyuk, it was a leg injury. It was a mild hamstring strain, so he could be ready for week one. The thing is, like, you don't want to go into week one having to already take deep shots off the waiver wire. I do like his profile, though. I would be trying to see if you can get your hands on Aiyuk and or Deebo Samuel if their prices are a little bit lower with some of the injuries that are occurring right now. Kendrick Bourne, we'll keep our eyes on him. He's only 25 years old, which actually blew my mind as I was kind of looking into a little bit of his profile. He'll be a guy I'll keep my eye on. He didn't see more than 4 receptions in a single game last year. For reference, Deebo was seeing 8 receptions on back-to-back weeks last season. So it's going to be Kittle just being a black hole of volume underneath, just sucking in every single ball that Jimmy G throws within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage, which is a lot of his throws. So unless Kittle goes down, I'm not touching Bourne. And don't even get me started on Dante Pettis. 48% of snaps on a run-first offense. I'm out. I'm not doing it.
Agreed. And so I guess to summarize, Steph, outside of Kittle, week one, if Deebo and Aiyuk aren't out there, even with increased opportunity or snaps, I'm not touching any of these 49ers options. Maybe in DFS, I'll take a gamble on one of them. But as far as season-long fantasy, the only way I'm taking Aiyuk or Deebo Samuel is if they fall below ADP and if I can get them at a value and stash them on my bench and hope that they pan out later down the line.